Hello everyone and welcome to our tip of the week. Last week we introduced a spatial reasoning question type which was looking at composite shapes. This week we're going to be looking at cubes and nets. This certainly is always seen as one of the most challenging question types under spatial reasoning and could be set by GL assessment, could be set by CEM, so it really is worth covering off and going through the techniques and strategies with your child. Certainly in the lessons, tutors will support children with cubes and nets and they'll get an opportunity to practice questions, but we thought it would be a good idea just to go through some techniques with you. There is also another video which is available which my colleague Luke Lloyd has done, which can be found on the student portal, and we've also added it in within the email that has gone out today. So let's have a little look at an example of a cubes and nets question. When we're looking at cubes and nets, one of the most important things that we would expect the children to do is learn the opposite faces first. So they need to think about which faces would never touch. Now I'm just going to get my pen and just illustrate this to you. So the first thing to recognise is that these two faces that I'm doing a red outline on would, when the net is folded up, they will not touch each other on the cube. Now, if they happen to be next to each other on the faces of the cube in our answer options, we can obviously cross them out. And you can see here that we've got the 4 dots and the quadrilateral. They are next to each other, but they're not allowed to be, because when you fold it up, they would have other faces in between and they would never touch each other. So what we can do then is we can rule out that answer option. We know that that can't be right. We can also check any others where that appears, and it does within D as well. So this again just limits our options. We then can come back and consider what other shapes on the faces can't touch. Well, this 4-pointed star here is not going to be able to touch this circle. And again, if we can see that happening, and we can see that happening in C, then we know that that cannot be correct. And the last one to look at is to focus on this blank face here. I think no shape on that face there. And then we've got the cross down the bottom. So those two faces would not be able to touch each other. But as you can see in E, they are touching each other. So therefore we can cross it out. Now, without working too hard, we're actually left with the right answer as B. And one of the things to think about with the answer is that those faces are able to be next to each other. And what we think about are things like L's, for example. And if we were to just rub out the faces just very, very quickly in terms of the opposite faces, you'll be able to see very quickly that this generates an L shape here. And there we are, we've got the L shape created there on our cube. So that's one of the things to think about, is there an L shape that's being created? So obviously if we've got 3 faces in a long line together, like here where we've got the 4 dots, the blank and the quadrilateral, this line here, that couldn't happen on a cube. We can't have 3 faces all in a line here. The other thing to think about is what we call orientation, and that's about where shapes are pointing and where they're positioned on the faces. And often if an arrow, for example, is included, that can really help, because if it's pointing at a shape, then obviously it needs to be pointing at that exact shape on the cube as well. We will certainly make sure that children also get exposure to different types of net, and if you are able to watch a lengthier video about cubes and nets that my colleague has done, then you will see that there are 11 different types of net that you can have, and it is about learning those opposite faces. Now, opposite faces won't always get you to the answer. Like in this example, you may have to consider what side those faces are on. For example, does it appear the faces appear on the left or the right, but also then, as I said earlier, thinking about orientation. We will be practicing these a lot, as I said, in the lessons. We also cover these off in revision camps as well, because we do know that they can be one of the trickiest question types under spatial reasoning. But I hope this short little video has helped, and we look forward to seeing you next week for our next tip of the week. Bye bye.